Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Hey, Dr. Scott Elkins and team. Thanks for joining us this morning. Dr. Scott, if it's all right, I'll navigate us through the agenda. Are you good with that plan?
I am, thank you.
Awesome. I know you have hard copies of everything, but first up, we
I do.
have our agenda here. Have you had a chance to review the agenda for today?
Yes.
And Ms. Morrison, Ms. Hutcherson's on board. Um, any items for the agenda, or can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I don't think we need to necessarily do
Okay.
motions and that kind of thing.
Hey,
Dr. Scott, you
Right.
may have different thoughts about this because it's a small committee. We're not necessarily like doing voting and all of that. But we're sort of following what the board generally does. So I think we can say, Dr. Scott, are you good with calling the meeting to order?
Yes, I would just like to call the Alternative Pathways Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Sherman.
thank you, ma'am. We have the agenda there. Next up would be our minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our previous meeting?
Matt, may I
Yes.
say one thing? I'm sorry. Good morning, everybody. Dr. Scott, when
Yes.
for the record for the minute, um, Miss Morrison and Dr. Franklin, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Um, because we don't have to necessarily take a vote, if you could just verbally approve the agenda and the minute, and then I can have that recorded in the minutes for the next meeting that you verbally approve the agenda as it was presented, as well as the minutes from November.
Okay. So, Dr. Scott, do you approve the
Yes,
agenda?
please go
And
ahead. I like to approve the agenda as far as, and as well as the minutes for the meeting,
Thank you,
committee
Dr.
meeting. Yes, my pleasure.
Very good. Next up, we'll move to 4.1, talk about some recent accomplishments. And wanted to share some things that we've been working on since our last committee meeting. First off, we've hosted our first virtual parent education night for vape prevention and intervention, which was well received. A lot of that actually stemmed from our Parents Advisory Council meeting. And we had some positive feedback from a presentation there. So we presented a virtual option, and now moving into the second semester, we'll actually have an in-person option. And we'll host that at R2I2 and have it open for all grade band levels. So stay tuned on those dates, but they're coming. Next up, we continue to host roundtable discussions for each band level, elementary, middle, and high. And Kim and her team have done a great job of bringing those administrators together and really help calibrate on the code of conduct and the discipline matrix to make sure we're finding some consistency at each school. And while a lot of the same issues are aligned, I think it's good to build that network and share out. So a lot of great success, and those numbers continue to climb as folks joining in. And we're trying to make those as possible, whether in person or virtual. But great job to Kim and her team for providing that. Next up, continuing with the roundtable idea, we're now extending that to our classified staff. And we'll be hosting in February. And Kim, you have to remind, I think it's February 17th, but we're hosting the classified staff and those folks who are very much closer to the work being handled to include instructional assistants, ISS monitors, hall monitors, bus drivers, provide labor support for them. But that'll be our first classified roundtable to bring them in and again address some of the real issues they're addressing and try to help calibrate and provide strategies for them. And one of the great successes from semester one, at our last committee meeting, as we shared with you, we partnered with the East School. We had some unique placement challenges as far as some kiddos not having access to the courses they need, along with some larger discipline issues, and we need to create some separation for some kiddos. So we aligned with Richland to East School to where they had a virtual option for alternate placement. And as you know, we want to align with the East School and their scheduling. So that was a semester placement. And those kiddos successfully completed semester one. They transitioned to their host school, or their home school, I should say, and they've left that placement with credits in hand. So that was a huge success. And as we roll into the second part of the pilot for semester two, we've already had a couple unique situations where we had to rely yet again on that alternate placement virtually. But just want to share the successes. Um, Kim, anything I missed, or Dr. Scott, anything you wanted to discuss from our successes for Richland from semester one?
I think you covered.
No, no. Mhm.
All right. Moving on from our last conversation, Dr. Scott, you spoke specifically about some bus infractions, and you hosted a couple conversations with folks from the bus transportation office about some concerns. So we want to make sure that we did the research for you. Two things we've done provided for you. Here is the discipline matrix. And this is what our bus staff uses and they supply to the school level to help with some of those infractions. And Kim, you've also reached out and provided a survey. Do you want to give us a little bit of feedback of some of the feedback you got from the survey and some of our
Yes.
next steps to help with the discipline matrix?
Yes. So out of the survey came some interesting results, one of which was a concern of inconsistencies among levels of how the information is communicated to parents. Several of the communication that I received is what led me to doing the survey. You know, parents calling regarding questions of suspension timeframes or the bus driver telling the student that they can't return, but no communication from the school. And so, out of the survey, the biggest discrepancy was how schools are communicating or not communicating to parents when there are infractions and how they are associating the consequences. So, we made sure that all schools received a copy of this flow chart slash matrix that came out of that department. In addition, I stressed the importance of making sure that there was a parent conference of some sort so that we are following the same policies that we use to govern other discipline infractions. So that was the biggest aha moment was that schools from a district system were not always utilizing this plan, which was creating some discrepancies and consequences, as well as lack of communication to parents when offenses occurred. So we're continuing to strengthen the systems, the communications, involving the executive directors of secondary and elementary, and just making sure that we're continuing to reinforce the same practices.
So, Dr. Scott, in addressing some of that whole business, did you have any other action items or anything else you want to address? And I believe we lost her.
Let's give her a minute, come back on.
Sure.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Scott.
Hey, I know we had some funny things going on.
All good. We're patient. We're waiting on you. So,
Okay,
Ms. Hutchinson was able to review, and hopefully you heard a
right.
lot of it. But we wanted to circle back. That was some unfinished committee business, and you had tasked us with providing that for you. But we want to make sure that number one, we address that concern and we provide some opportunity for follow up. But that was the homework you had for us when we want to check in. Any other action items for that unfinished business?
Yes, and let me just say this. Thank you so much for the research that you guys have done. And Ms. Hutchison, thank you so much for the presentation. But I do want to share this because I think it's very important for everyone to know and to understand. Um, the work that we're doing is for the best interest of all students. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm only focused on bus discipline. I'm focused on discipline across the board. Discipline in the classrooms, discipline in the hallways, discipline at the bus stop, discipline in the cafeteria. I chose the bus transportation because a lot of times when we're doing activities and we say we want to be inclusive, we forget the transportation piece. And we forget that. But what we must realize is they're the people who see the students before any of us. And they make sure that the students arrive to us safely. And they also are the last group of people to see the students. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we include them to let them know that they are really a true important factor of what we do in the schools because they get the day started for us. So I wanted to at least put that out there because I don't want anyone that's watching or anyone here just thinking that my main focus could just be bus transportation because it's discipline across the board. So I did want to say that. And I do appreciate that feedback because I think that was part of what Ms. Pam had indicated that, we have an inconsistency of how we deal with students when they do have discipline problems on the bus, completely different than how we do it in the school system because in the classroom we have those tiers and layers. And that's good to know that we have recognized this and that we have a plan to try to get it consistent across the board. So thank you guys very much for that detailed presentation.
Very good. Great points. I'm glad you shared that. Next up, new committee business. We discussed a little bit and want to circle back to proposal for the alternate placement duration. So a little bit of our last conversation was talking about our work with the Richland to E School and just a little bit of history to review. Once upon a time, that alternate placement was a semester. But of course, based on volume and the growth and the use of alternate placement, we had to look at it differently. So that's why I kind of shifted back to 45 days. And some data that Kim and I have looked at, we've noticed that while it's been successful in serving the needs of our kiddos in a way, we've noticed that there's been some academic gaps in that 45 days. And so our thought, having teamed up with eSchool and seeing that we've expanded our capacity, if need to, we can rely on them. We were wondering if we could revisit the when there is an appeal possibly for alternate placement. Our proposal, as you can see right here, is to use the terminology a placement of at least 45 days up to 90 days. And that kind of gives us a little bit of room to where that kid, for example, if today little Max Sherman made a poor choice and we're right in the start of quarter 3, and the outcome right here was to placement alternate placement, the best outcome academically would be to finish this semester there. So I can finish this course as aligned with those teachers. Then also, if I did transition from my personal needs, whether transportation or a conflict in place at Blythe Academy into the virtual setting, it aligns with their format. So the number one focus for this is to ensure academic success and alternate placement. So we just want to bring that back for discussion and possibly try to elevate this, Dr. Scott, for discussion among the school board for, again, the terminology to be at least 45 days up to 90 days, giving us a window to serve students in alternate placement.
And thank you for sharing that because you must have been a fly on the wall because we briefly discussed this. And I most definitely would be willing to take that before the board because a lot of us had concerns about even moving that to 90 days. And I, for one, do have a concern. And a couple of concerns that I have. I understand how it ties, the 90 days can tie into the semester. But last night, I think some of us kind of discussed the fact that especially, and I think, Matt, you kind of get on this. When you have a kid who's an honor roll student who's never been in trouble, made a minor mistake, landed them at Blackwood Academy, that's very difficult for the parents as well as for the student to be there. And 90 days is a long time. That's 3 months. And does it really warrant 3 months? Because the thing about students is, even if they're doing their academic, it's not going to disrupt their system to move back to their classroom, back to their regular school setting. So that's really not a major disruption. The disruption is having students who feel out of place and out of bound, spending 90 days at Lakewood Academy for a minor infraction, one that, although it's their first, it still caused them to land there. Because sometimes, it could be your first, but it's so large that it takes you straight to, being recommended for expulsion. And that's just how the ball bounces sometimes. But, I would be more than happy to consider this and to take it back to committee just to get their feedback as well.
We hope you would. And again, that terminology really opens the door to where, again, the example of little Matt, to your point, I seem to be a great kiddo. I'm on track academically. I made a poor choice. I do need transition alternate placement because that's the outcome. and I've stayed on track. I've reached academic success. I'm where I need to be, and that provides a seamless transition back to my home school. Or the other side of that coin is I'm not doing the things I need to do. I am struggling academically. If I transition back, is that setting me up for success or failure? Maybe I need to continue through the semester and try to accomplish as many credits as possible in that placement. So I think it gives a window to really look at student success versus that kiddo who really needs more time to kind of recalibrate before they go back to the home school. So yes, if you look at that possibility of terminology being at least 45 days up to 90, I think that meets the needs of the kiddos. We have the capacity, but also part of that is if we did have to utilize that virtual option, it definitely aligns to the format that was created for the PTP and was approved by the board. So it's a couple things we're trying to accomplish there. Does that make
Right, and let
sense?
me ask you a question,
Mhm.
Matt, to make sure I'm clear. You're not trying to change 45 straight to 90. You want 45, between 45 and 90.
Yes, ma'am. But with the
Oh,
understanding
okay. Oh,
being,
well, you know what? We already offer that, so that's easy. I thought you and I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you wanted to just wipe clean the 45 days and just do strictly 90.
right, and we've noticed in some of the terminology from
Mhm.
recent appeals, there may be terminology like for the remainder of the quarter, for the remainder of the
Yes,
semester, and
yes.
that's very specific terminology versus if we said at least 45 days up to 90.
Right.
Again, if I'm a family that chose that virtual option, I'm
Mhm.
taking that virtual option knowing I'm finishing semester virtually because that is the expectation of
Right.
RTE school. So we just want to be
Okay.
clear providing options for families.
Right. And I really appreciate that. And if you guys can give me some clear terminology, so when I do share that, I'll be more than happy to share that with my colleagues. Absolutely.
We'll tweak that and supply it for you. Absolutely.
Oh, I can't
Can I
hear
jump
you.
in as well?
Ma'am,
Dr. Scott, I would also suggest that when we kind of produce that verbiage for you to use with board members, that we take a look at the policies that govern expulsion and just make sure that, the terminology, I think that it already matches and is that current policy would allow this kind of verbiage. But Dr. Scott, if you're okay, we'll also look at the policies that are involved in it as well. Maybe include that in what you can share with what you intend to share with board members. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that works perfectly because the policy does align 45 days up to 90 or 45
Mhm.
days for the remainder of the school year. So we do have that flexibility. As long as we start with that 45 days, we have the
Mhm.
flexibility to go from 45 to the end of the school year.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think
Okay.
sometimes what we get into is sometimes when the vote happens and the vote, like the approval happens in the approval of the appeal or not, or that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's days or specific time periods indicated that
Hmm.
doesn't always allow a student to finish and earn the credits they need to earn during the time that they are, um, you know, um, uh, taking care of what they need to take care of related to Blythewood Academy or that kind of thing.
Well, that's new because normally, and that's the first I've heard of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've never heard of that because it's always where students have the opportunity to actually finish their coursework either at Blackwood
Hmm.
Academy or transfer over to their school site.
Right,
So
right. So
okay.
this would kind of take care of, make it more consistent about how that's done. So Matt will work on the policy. That will take a look at the policies as well. Make sure that Dr. Scott has what she needs to engage with the board on this.
Right. And if you guys can get that to me, I would try to get it on not the upcoming meeting, but the second meeting in February.
Okay.
yes, ma'am. We will make
Yes.
it happen.
And we can try to get that. And now just remember, once we have these conversations and we vote on it, it goes into effect immediately. So
Yep.
that
Mhm.
gives us some time to do that. If you guys, if that's enough time for you all to have it to me, so I can try to get it on the agenda for the second meeting in February, is that enough time for everyone?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. We'll make that happen.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Very good. Next up on new business is a semester one discipline update, and we share this with you. A lot of data there, but I was going to have Kim jump in and kind of give you some of the conclusions and next points. Is that okay, Dr. Scott?
Okay, great.
All right, Kim. I'll scroll down to
Okay,
some.
all right. So when we are looking at our data, we've noticed an increase from quarter one to quarter two, representing a 15.1 increase across the district. However, when we disaggregate it, even though it's district wide, we've identified certain areas of focus. Primarily, there's a huge difference in how elementary operates in terms of discipline and interventions versus secondary. And for that reason, we've tried to tailor a lot of the professional development that we provide to hone in on what we're recognizing as a lot of the concerns. In school suspensions, even though the numbers reflect that there is an increase, some schools have moved towards utilizing in school suspension differently. In other words, when we look at ISS, you may have this particular middle school that is operating it like a traditional ISS versus another middle school may be utilizing it as an opportunity for intervention and for refocus. So in both, they're in the same setting, but some middle schools are, some high schools are more intentional about what's being done when they're in those settings. So even though there's an increase, some of the increase is due to intervention. However, despite those, we can disaggregate it from in school to out of school. And that's where we focus a lot of our concern because we know that out of school leads to academic issues, chronic absenteeism. And so, again, quarter one, noticing an increase there, and as well as with the percentages. But when we do a breakdown, the main concern and the main driver, and a lot of this growth is middle school. We've had conversations with leaders at this level and even trickled it down through talks at the middle schools to highlight and disaggregate by grade levels. So I am actually going into the middle schools and working with them through the BEDS pilot process of helping them to streamline who are the kids that need to be placed on watch lists, who are the kids that need to be served with tier two interventions, who are the people that would be providing the intervention. So there's some schools that already have been implementing this type of tiered process, and then there are others that are very underdeveloped. Another issue that we find with our secondary is a lot of times decisions are made that may be out of the perimeter of how our code of conduct is outlined. For instance, if I see for, let's say, a fight, even though that's level two, and even though the matrix says that I don't have to recommend, you have some leaders that have decided these no tolerance policies within our policies. So just trying to make sure that we continue to stress that we have one policy. Leaders can't take district policy and create school-based policy and practices. So again, making sure that we're constantly looking at data, sharing it, and providing that PD as deemed necessary. A lot of the behavioral drivers are things that can easily be deterred through focuses on hotspot areas. So again, making sure with secondary that there's heavily monitoring, making sure that you have enough supervision at the elementary level when it comes to recess and other hotspot areas. So again, making sure that that development is in place. When we return back from winter break, we also broke down some strategies to support transition because research shows us that around this time, behavior spikes. And so, again, we're working collaboratively with the executive directors, Ms. Footman, as well as Dr. Suber, to make sure that we're providing real-time data and real-time strategies. So when we talk about all of these implications, and what we will do to make sure that we are providing support that's personalized but yet meaningful. We'll continue to do the calibrations and the alignment with schools to increase their trainings, continue to ensure that schools are following the established policies that are aligned with our suspension processes, make sure that schools are utilizing the behavior intervention agreement. What we noticed when we looked at our data in comparison to from last year to this year, that a lot of students that were repeaters were not provided interventions to deter behavior. So we have come up with a process where if a student is being referred for a recommendation for expulsion, the school must include all interventions that they've done with that student prior. It doesn't mean that the child can't be recommended. It just helps us to determine what the school is doing from an actionable lens to deter problematic behavior. Again, implementing the BEST model that is very similar to the BEST model that was designed a couple of years ago. Continue with hosting roundtable discussions, working with our hearing officers to ensure that there's alignment and consistency with decision making, daily support to administrators with the discipline matrix and interventions, participate in school MTSS and LSS meetings, as well as continue to promote and provide parent and community education. And so that's kind of like an overall summary of the behavior as well as our plan or approach to make sure that we're constantly promoting support for schools at every level. As Mr. Sherman alluded to, this will be the first opportunity for classified staff, because what we noticed in reading a lot of the referrals is that in certain situations, specifically secondary, kids were being suspended in-school suspension. Or we notice opportunities where adults were triggering behaviors by not using de-escalation strategies or not having the toolbox to create opportunities to restore students. So those are some of the strategies that we want to make sure that we expand, not just to our administrators, but also to classified staff as well. So that kind of summarized the scope of our first semester and the roles that we are taking to support behavior.
Thank you, Kim. Dr. Scott?
Yes, Ms. Hutchinson, thank you so much. You must have been peeping at my notes because I was going to ask about what are we doing to provide training for classified staff? And of course, you shared that information. But the other question that I have, and I know, Ms. Hutchinson, you've been a part of this, and you guys know I'm heavily involved with restorative practices and how I feel about that. So I'm just wondering, have we trained the school administrators in restorative practices? And have we even considered doing some student circles going into the schools, working with those students that have been identified with having some types of issues and with conflict resolutions, with disrespect, and some of those things. So what are we doing as far as students? How are we getting in there to provide professional development to our students? Because, you know, you guys are well aware that's what I do for a living. I'm a restorative practices trainer. And I know that Richland too is also a part of restorative practices. And I know because I've seen it firsthand, if you use it effectively, it works. It works. But it also works well with students. And I've seen that. I do student groups all the time. And I've seen that. So are we doing that? Or is that something you guys actually have considered?
It is, and actually, I think you've been reading our notes, so now it's your turn. An update: we met as an LSS action team 2 weeks ago and devoted an entire Friday to it. Actually, before the break, I should say, an entire Friday to this work. And we recognize, to your point, how do we get this work closest to the student? And so we realize, and you've seen, I mean, you've been a part of Richland too for so long that we've had a lot of transition, both at the administrative level as well as staff. And are we as trained as prepared as we should be? So we have created a 12-month cycle, and we have split up the training, to your point, into three tiers. Tier one being everyone in Richland two, from the teacher, classified staff. Do they have the skill set and the resources that you just alluded to help with some of the de-escalation? Tier two is a lot of your administrative and your LSS support staff. What can they bring back to their campus? What can they drop down into a faculty meeting on a regular basis when they go into department meetings, they go into grade level meetings? Do they have the training and the resource to take that on a regular basis to keep our staff up to date with these skills? And then level three is train the trainers, to where we take the expertise of our district level LSS team, train school-based personnel to go back and train their staff. So to your point, we recognize to get to that closest to the student, we need to equip our adults. And so going before the cabinet on the February 17th, we have a 12-month cycle. We prepared, as we just described to you, we're going to have the entire cabinet vetted because we recognize looking at these opportunities to pull staff, train staff, where does it align with other expectations like academic, operations, IT, and where's some other things that we're pulling them in separate directions? Because we want to equip them, but we want to make sure they have access to it, everyone. So truly is going to be a 12-month cycle to get everyone where we need them to be. And we're hoping to even leverage some of our summer dates coming up and our opening in service. So I think we're definitely aligned to your vision. How does that sound?
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. And
We're,
I'm just so excited because I can tell you guys have been doing the work. You've been
what
doing
we
the work, and I
learn,
really appreciate it.
you hire experts,
Yeah.
you give them the skills
And
they need.
and right. And I say this all the time, but it matters who are on the bus. And we have the right people on the bus for this position, what you're doing, Matt, as well as what Kim is doing. And I think this bus is getting ready to really take off. And I do appreciate your leadership, your guidance, and I appreciate the experience that you bring from your schools, your educational background, your relationships with students and with parents, and your common sense to know what it is that we need to do to help these students, be successful, but also to be a support system for the teachers and classified staff as well. So I do appreciate it.
Well, we're excited. We value your trust and your vision. So we're all on the same page. A thought, Dr. Scott, we created this
Yes.
semester one review to give you a lot of data. And again, you saw some conclusions here and next steps. Could this serve for you as the feedback to your board members from our committee? Could this serve as your committee report? Or are you looking for something different to share from our committee work today?
Oh, no, 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 no. Most definitely this could most definitely serve for sure.
Okay. Well, I think
Yes.
it's a good resource for you. Again, it gives you a lot of feedback from semester one, and again, conclusions and next steps. So we'll let this serve as your
Mhm.
committee report. All right.
Hey,
Uh,
can I jump in one more time?
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Please.
Scott. And I think this will be important for you all to really think about. So one of the things that we noticed that when the board went to the South Carolina School Board Association conference last year, there are a lot of districts that present very good programs and those kinds of pieces. We want to become that district, and we are in that process. But one of the things to be aware of is that Mr. Sherman and Ms. Hutcherson are both coming to the School Board Association conference this year in order to hear some of those practices that are happening related to discipline in other South Carolina districts, so they have the landscape and there can be continued conversations about what you might see at the School Board Association conference, what they see, and we can bring it to this committee for discussion.
Yes, that's great.
Okay. All right, so Matt, do you want to, we'll have to do you're going to take us through number 7 and number 8, right?
So next steps, talking about our next meeting agenda. We'll follow the same format to include the call to order, going over the agenda. We'll review our minutes from this meeting. We'll definitely have some more district accomplishments between now and our next committee to give you some reflection. Unfinished business, I think we will circle back to the classified staff roundtable to let you know how that has gone and give you feedback
Okay.
from there. Also, we talked about the increasing staff with de-escalation, some relationship-centered practices. We'll have some opportunities there before our next committee meeting. So we'll have that as unfinished business to revisit, and give you some feedback. New business. What are some things on your agenda, Dr. Scott, that we can start preparing for and have ready for you?
But really, for new business, I don't think there should be any new business because I would like for us to kind of focus on me taking this to the board about those days, the 45 to 90.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you want to call that new business, we can do that and try to have feedback. But right now, there is no new business. And I would like for us to really not meet again until we actually have the opportunity for me to take that before the board. And therefore, I can come back to you guys with an update of just how the conversation went and what direction we're thinking about, considering.
Absolutely. So we'll put our focus on, again, reviewing those policies, administrative
Yes.
rule, make sure we have that terminology aligned to that and
Yes,
completely formatted to where you can reference it and provide the correct terminology. And like you said, at our next meeting, we'll look forward to not only the unfinished business of classified and ongoing training, but new conversation about that feedback. How does that sound?
yeah, that's perfect.
All right, so
Well, with
just to
uh,
clarify,
mhm.
so Dr. Scott, you're thinking that we'll provide the information that you need to go to the board about the 45 to 90 days. That'll happen in February because you're thinking the February meetings or maybe the later February meeting. And then we wouldn't have another
Yes,
committee meeting
yes,
until March. Is that what you're thinking?
yes.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. Back to you, Matt.
All right, friends. I'll entertain the opportunity to adjourn if we conclude all of our business for the day, and I think we have. Dr. Scott?
Yes. Do we want to, or have we looked at a date in March for the next meeting?
I've got it. I've got it. Hang on. Where did I put
Okay.
it?
Because I know the school board meeting will be on February 24th.
Mhm. I think it is March 20. I think it's the day after. I have that.
So March 11th?
I have us scheduled for alternative pathways for March 31st.
Mhm.
Does that work? We'd have the board meeting. We could give you hard copy documents to get ready for the committee meeting
Yes,
at the
that would be
time, and that might
perfect.
give you the time that you
Yes,
need. Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
31st.
All right. So next meeting on March 31st.
Okay, still good.
All right, Dr. Scott, do you want to go ahead and adjourn us?
Yes, I'll like turn the Alternative Pathways Committee meeting at, let's see what time it is, at 10 a.m.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
All
Drive, stay
right.
warm and have a wonderful week.
Thanks
Okay.
Yes,
to you
ma'am.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.